He was the youngest CEO in fashion history, cold, calculating, untouchable. She was an unpaid intern from the Bronx, invisible to his world. When his brother dared him to take the next woman who walked through his door to the company gala,
Fine, I'll take the next woman, whoever she is.
he expected someone forgettable. Instead, when Raina Mitchell walked in carrying design sketches, something shifted. At the gala, dressed in emerald silk, she didn't just turn heads, she captured his.
I'm not some prop you can use for whatever game you're playing.
The woman meant to soften his image for one night became the one person who could see through his walls.
You changed everything.
Your father told me about the board vote. If they see you with me instead of someone like Sophia.
Now a billionaire CEO must choose between the empire he inherited and the love that could cost him everything. Will Dominic risk his legacy for the intern who walked in and stole his heart? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. Raina Mitchell hurried through the crowded New York subway station, clutching her worn backpack close to her chest. Her alarm hadn't gone off, and now she was running late for her unpaid internship at King & Cross, one of the biggest fashion companies in the world. "Excuse me," she said quietly as she squeezed past other commuters. 2 hours later, she finally reached the gleaming glass building in Manhattan. Raina took a deep breath, smoothed down her simple navy dress, the nicest thing she owned, and walked through the revolving doors. Unlike the other interns with their designer clothes and perfect hairstyles, Raina didn't look like she belonged at King & Cross, but she had something they didn't, real talent and a work ethic that wouldn't quit. "You're late again, Mitchell," said Patricia, the office manager, without looking up from her computer. "The design team is looking for those winter sketches. They should have been delivered an hour ago." "I'm sorry," Raina said, rushing to her small desk in the corner of the busy office. "The train was delayed and—" "Save it," Patricia cut her off. "Just get those sketches to the main conference room now." Raina nodded, quickly gathering the large portfolio containing next season's dress designs. She'd actually fixed several mistakes in them the night before, staying up until 2 a.m. to make sure the measurements were correct. Nobody would thank her for it, but she knew it mattered. Meanwhile, in the main conference room on the top floor, Dominic Cross sat at the head of a long table, his face expressionless as he listened to the marketing team's presentation. At 31, he was the youngest CEO in the company's history, taking over after his father's retirement 3 years ago. "And that concludes our proposal for the winter campaign," said the marketing director, smiling nervously. Dominic didn't smile back. "The concept is stale. Redo it." The room fell silent. No one dared to argue with him. Dominic Cross had a reputation for being brilliant but cold, a man who cared about numbers and results, not feelings. His younger brother, James, was the only one who seemed unbothered by Dominic's icy demeanor. As the marketing team gathered their things and left, James propped his feet up on the empty chair next to him. "You know, Dom, you could try saying please and thank you once in a while. Might make people hate working for you a little less." Dominic raised an eyebrow. "I don't pay them to like me." "Well, the board is concerned about your image," James said, suddenly serious. "The winter gala is next week, and all the big investors will be there. They think you come across as..." "As what?" "As a robot," James finished. "Cold, unfeeling. Not someone they want representing the brand." Dominic sighed. This wasn't the first time he'd heard this. After Vanessa had betrayed him 5 years ago, sleeping with his former business partner and trying to steal company secrets, he'd decided that keeping his distance from everyone was the safest approach. "What do they want me to do? Start crying during meetings?" James laughed. "No, but maybe show that you're human. Bring a date to the gala for starters. Someone unexpected, someone who might soften your image a bit." "A date?" Dominic scoffed. "I don't have time for dating." "Then just find someone for one night," James pushed. "Anyone. I bet you couldn't even do that if you tried." Something in Dominic's jaw twitched. He hated being challenged. "Fine," he said coldly. "I'll take the next woman who walks through that door." James burst out laughing. "You can't be serious." "I'm always serious," Dominic replied. "The next woman, whoever she is." Just as the words left his mouth, the conference room door opened. Raina rushed down the hallway, the heavy portfolio making her arms ache. She checked the room number again. Conference room A. This was it. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the door and froze. Sitting at the table were 2 men. One was relaxed, feet up, with a friendly face. The other was Dominic Cross himself, the infamous CEO she'd only ever glimpsed from a distance. His dark eyes locked onto hers immediately, and she felt her heart skip a beat. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "I was told to bring these sketches here." She nearly dropped the portfolio when she saw how intensely Dominic was staring at her. James looked from Raina to his brother, then burst out laughing. "Oh, this is too perfect." Raina stood awkwardly, not understanding what was happening. "Should I come back later?" "No," Dominic said, his voice firm. He stood up, buttoning his perfectly tailored suit jacket. "What's your name?" "Raina Mitchell," she answered. "I'm an intern in the design department." "Well, Raina Mitchell," Dominic said, taking the portfolio from her hands and placing it on the table without looking at it. "You'll do." "I'll do," she repeated, confused. "You're coming with me to the winter gala next week." Raina's eyes widened. "What? I don't understand." James was still chuckling. "Oh, this is going to be interesting." "Is this some kind of joke?" Raina asked, looking between the two men. "Because I don't think it's funny." "I never joke," Dominic said simply. "You will attend the gala as my date next Friday. My assistant will contact you with the details." Raina felt her face grow hot with a mixture of embarrassment and anger. "With all due respect, Mr. Cross, I'm not some prop you can use for whatever game you're playing." Dominic looked surprised, as if he wasn't used to being refused. "This isn't a request, Miss Mitchell, it's a business arrangement." "I don't work for free," Raina shot back before she could stop herself. Then she paled, realizing she'd just talked back to the CEO of the company. "I mean, you actually do work for free," Dominic pointed out. "That's what an unpaid internship is." James whistled low. "She's got spirit. I'll give her that." Raina's hands trembled slightly. "May I be excused, Mr. Cross?" Dominic studied her for a moment, then nodded. "My assistant will call you tomorrow, and Raina?" She paused at the door. "Yes? Trust me. You'll be safe with me." The sincerity in his voice surprised her. Without another word, she left the room, her heart pounding. That evening, Raina sat at the small kitchen table in the apartment she shared with her grandmother in the Bronx. The 2-hour commute had given her plenty of time to replay the strange encounter in her mind. "You're quiet tonight," her grandmother, Eloise, observed as she placed a bowl of stew in front of Raina. At 75, Eloise Mitchell was still sharp as a tack, with kind eyes that didn't miss much. "Something happened at that fancy job of yours," Raina sighed. "It's not a job, Grandma. It's an unpaid internship." "Humph," Eloise snorted. "In my day, we called that exploitation." Despite everything, Raina smiled. "The CEO asked me to go to some big company event with him as his date." Eloise's eyebrows shot up. "A date? With the big boss?" "It's not a real date," Raina explained. "It felt more like, I don't know, like he was proving a point to someone. I happened to walk in at the wrong time, or the right time," Eloise said thoughtfully. "What's he like, this CEO?" Raina thought about Dominic's intense gaze, his commanding presence. Cold, intimidating. "Everyone's afraid of him. And are you afraid of him?" "I should be," Raina admitted. "But no, there was something in his eyes when he said I'd be safe with him. I believed him." Eloise nodded slowly. "Your mother always said you were a good judge of character." The mention of her mother made Raina's chest tighten. Diana Mitchell had walked out when Raina was 13, leaving her in Eloise's care without so much as a goodbye. 12 years later, the abandonment still stung. "Mum wasn't exactly an expert on character," Raina said quietly. Eloise reached across the table and patted her granddaughter's hand. "So, will you go?" "I don't know," Raina sighed. "I don't have anything to wear to a fancy gala, and I'd feel so out of place." "Sometimes," Eloise said wisely, "we need to step out of our comfort zones to find out what we're really made of." The next day at work, Raina was organizing fabric samples when a sleek woman in a designer suit approached her desk. "Raina Mitchell?" the woman asked. "Yes? I'm Victoria Powell, Mr. Cross's executive assistant. He's asked me to handle the arrangements for the gala." Raina felt several pairs of eyes turn in her direction. "I haven't decided if I'm going yet," she said quietly. Victoria looked amused. "That's not how this works. When Dominic Cross says you're going, you're going." She handed Raina a business card. "Be at this address tomorrow at 5 p.m. for a fitting. The company will provide your dress, shoes, and accessories." "I can't accept—" "This isn't charity, Miss Mitchell," Victoria interrupted. "Mr. Cross needs you to represent King and Cross appropriately. Consider it part of your internship duties." With that, Victoria turned and walked away, leaving Raina holding the card for one of New York's most exclusive boutiques. Patricia appeared at her side almost immediately. "What was that about?" "Nothing," Raina tried to say, but Patricia snatched the card from her hand. Why is Victoria Powell giving you the address to Elise's boutique? She demanded. Raina took a deep breath. Mr. Cross asked me to attend the winter gala with him. Patricia's eyes widened in disbelief. You? Why would he ask you? The question stung, but Raina kept her expression neutral. I don't know. Maybe he recognized that I've been doing the work of 2 departments for months without anyone noticing. She immediately regretted her words when Patricia's face hardened. Don't get ideas above your station, Mitchell. Whatever game Cross is playing, remember that you're just an intern, replaceable. Dominic sat in his corner office reviewing the latest financial reports when James walked in without knocking. So how's Operation Human Image going? James asked, dropping into the chair across from Dominic's desk. I have no idea what you're talking about. Your date, the intern. Raina, right? Dominic put down his pen. She's going to the gala with me. Victoria is handling the details. And why her? James pressed. You could have waited for someone else to walk through that door. Maybe one of the models or a marketing executive. Dominic found himself remembering Raina's honest eyes, the way she'd stood up to him. She was unexpected. That's the point, James reminded him. But I have to say, I'm surprised you're actually going through with this. I always keep my word, Dominic said firmly. Well, the board will be pleased. Nothing humanizes a cold CEO like having a beautiful woman on his arm. Something about that statement bothered Dominic. She's not a prop, James raised an eyebrow. Isn't she? Isn't that exactly what you're using her for? Before Dominic could respond, his phone rang. It was his father, Richard Cross, calling from his retirement home in Florida. Dominic put the call on speaker. Father. Dominic, Richard's voice crackled through the line. I hear you're bringing a date to the gala. Dominic shot James an accusatory look. His brother merely shrugged. News travels fast, Dominic said dryly. Who is she? Richard demanded. Someone suitable, I hope. She works for the company, Dominic replied carefully. An executive? Someone with connections? An intern, actually. There was a pause. Then Richard laughed harshly. An intern? Is this some kind of joke? No, father, it's not a joke. Dominic, that gala is worth millions in potential investments. I didn't hand over my company to you so you could play games. Dominic's jaw tightened. I'm not playing games, and it's my company now. Then act like it, Richard snapped. Find someone appropriate to bring. Someone who won't embarrass the Cross name. The line went dead. James looked at Dominic sympathetically. You know how he gets, James said. But he's right about one thing. The gala is important. I know exactly how important it is, Dominic said coldly. And I've made my decision. Raina Mitchell will be my date. What Dominic couldn't explain, even to himself, was why the thought of walking into that gala with Raina by his side felt right somehow. The next evening, Raina stood nervously outside the boutique. The windows displayed dresses that probably cost more than 6 months of her grandmother's pension. She was about to turn around and leave when the door opened. Miss Mitchell, a stylish woman with a French accent, greeted her. I'm Elise, please come in, we've been expecting you. The next 2 hours were a blur of fabrics, measurements, and more attention than Raina had ever received in her life. Elise and her assistants fussed over her, bringing dress after dress for her to try. No, Elise would say. Not right for her coloring. Too simple. Too flashy. Finally, Elise brought out a deep emerald green gown. When Raina put it on and looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The dress fit perfectly, highlighting her slender waist and flowing gracefully to the floor. This is the one, Elise declared. Mr. Cross will approve. Raina turned to look at the back of the dress. It's beautiful, but I can't possibly. Already paid for, Elise assured her. Along with these, she brought out a box containing elegant heels in the same deep green and a small clutch purse. The dress will be delivered to your home next Friday morning, along with a hairstylist and makeup artist, Elise explained. Mr. Cross has arranged everything. As Raina left the boutique, she felt a mixture of excitement and unease. Why was Dominic Cross going to such lengths for a fake date? And why did part of her wish it was real? A week later, the day of the gala arrived. True to Elise's word, the dress was delivered to Raina's apartment, along with a team of professionals who transformed her small living room into a makeshift beauty salon. Eloise watched in amazement as her granddaughter was transformed into someone who looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. You look just like your mother, Eloise said softly. She was beautiful too. Raina smiled sadly. Do you think she ever regrets leaving? Before Eloise could answer, there was a knock at the door. One of the stylists opened it to reveal a chauffeur in a crisp uniform. Miss Mitchell, Mr. Cross sent me to drive you to his penthouse. He'll meet you there before the gala. Raina hugged her grandmother goodbye. Don't wait up, Grandma. Oh, I definitely will. Eloise winked. I want to hear all about this not a date of yours. The drive to Manhattan was surreal. Raina had never been in a car so luxurious. The chauffeur dropped her off at one of the most exclusive buildings in the city, where a doorman escorted her to a private elevator. When the elevator doors opened, Raina found herself in the most beautiful apartment she'd ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city at sunset. Miss Mitchell. She turned to find Dominic Cross watching her from across the room. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored tuxedo that made him even more handsome than usual. For once, his expression wasn't cold. He seemed surprised. You look, he started, then seemed to search for the right word. Perfect. Raina felt her cheeks warm. Thank you, the dress is beautiful. It's not the dress, Dominic said quietly. Then, seeming to catch himself, he added more formally, I appreciate you agreeing to this arrangement. Did I have a choice? Raina asked. Dominic approached her slowly. Everyone has choices, Raina. You could have said no. And risk my internship? He looked genuinely surprised. I would never fire someone for refusing a personal request. Raina studied his face, trying to understand this complex man. Then why me? Why not ask someone else? Dominic hesitated. It started as a challenge from my brother. But then you walked in and what? And I realized you were exactly who I needed. Before Raina could ask what he meant, the elevator doors opened again and James walked in. Well, well, James said, looking Raina up and down appreciatively. You've outdone yourself, Dom. No one's going to believe she's just an intern. Raina stiffened. I should go. Dominic shot his brother a warning look, then turned to Raina. Please don't. James didn't mean anything by it. Actually, I meant it as a compliment, James clarified. You look stunning, Raina. The car is waiting, Dominic said, offering Raina his arm. Shall we? As they rode to the gala, Raina felt increasingly nervous. What am I supposed to do tonight? What's my role in all this? Dominic looked at her thoughtfully. Just be yourself. That's all I ask. And what if being myself means telling the truth when people ask how we met? A small smile tugged at the corner of Dominic's mouth. Then tell the truth. I walked into a room expecting nothing, and you changed everything. Raina's heart skipped a beat at his words. Before she could respond, the car stopped in front of a magnificent hotel. Through the windows, she could see camera flashes and a red carpet. Ready? Dominic asked. Raina took a deep breath. No, but let's do it anyway. As Dominic helped her out of the car, the cameras started flashing even more frantically. Whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. Who is she? That's Dominic Cross with an unknown woman. Is that his new girlfriend? Dominic placed his hand gently on the small of her back, guiding her toward the entrance. Just breathe, he whispered. You're doing great. Raina lifted her chin and walked beside him, suddenly aware that this night would change everything for both of them. The King and Cross Winter Gala was unlike anything Raina had ever experienced. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting a warm glow on the hundreds of elegantly dressed guests. Famous models, wealthy investors, and fashion icons filled the grand ballroom. And here she was, Raina Mitchell from the Bronx, walking in on the arm of Dominic Cross. Mr. Cross, who's your date tonight? Called out a reporter as they made their way inside. Dominic's hand tightened slightly on Raina's back. This is Raina Mitchell. She works with me at King and Cross. The reporter looked surprised. Not a model, not an actress? No, Dominic said firmly. Ms. Mitchell is far more interesting than that. Raina felt dozens of eyes on her as they moved through the crowd. She recognized famous faces from magazines and billboards, people whose photos she'd clipped for inspiration over the years. Everyone's staring, she whispered to Dominic. Let them, he replied. They're just surprised to see me with someone genuine for a change. Before Raina could ask what he meant, an older couple approached them. The man resembled an older version of Dominic, with the same strong jaw and commanding presence. Uncle Robert, Aunt Margaret, Dominic greeted them. May I introduce Raina Mitchell? Lovely to meet you, dear, Margaret said, though her eyes showed curiosity. We've never seen Dominic bring a date to one of these events before. I'm not exactly, Raina began, but Dominic cut her off. Raina works in our design department, he said. She has an exceptional eye for detail. Uncle Robert raised an eyebrow. I see. Well, the board members will be pleased you've made an effort tonight, Dominic. As they moved away, Raina turned to Dominic. Is that what this is? Making an effort for the board? Something flashed in his eyes. That's how it started, he admitted. but now I'm not so sure." Before she could ask what he meant, a tall, stunning blonde woman in a red dress approached them. The way she moved, confident and practiced, told Raina this was someone important. "Dominic," the woman purred. "What a surprise. I didn't think this was your kind of scene anymore." "Vanessa," Dominic replied, his voice suddenly cold. "I wasn't aware you were invited." Vanessa laughed, the sound like glass breaking. "Your brother was kind enough to put me on the list. We're working together on a project." She turned her attention to Raina, looking her up and down with barely concealed disdain. "And who's this?" "Raina Mitchell," Dominic said. "Raina, this is Vanessa Morgan, a former associate of the company." Raina instantly recognized the name. Office gossip had told her all about Vanessa, the model who had dated Dominic years ago, only to betray him by selling company secrets to a competitor. The scandal had nearly cost King & Cross millions. "An intern," Vanessa guessed, her smile sharp. "How sweet. Are you playing fairy godmother now, Dominic?" Raina felt her cheeks burn, but she held her ground. "Actually, I've been working on the winter collection. The asymmetrical necklines were my suggestion." Vanessa's smile faltered slightly. "Really? Well, enjoy your night in the spotlight, darling. These moments don't last long." She touched Dominic's arm. "We should catch up later, for old time's sake." As Vanessa walked away, Raina noticed how tense Dominic had become. "She really hurt you, didn't she?" she asked quietly. Dominic looked surprised. "Most people are too afraid to ask me personal questions." "I'm not most people." His expression softened. "No, you're not. And yes, she did hurt me. But the business betrayal was worse than the personal one. Is that why you keep everyone at a distance?" Before he could answer, the band started playing, and couples moved to the dance floor. "Would you like to dance?" Dominic asked, offering his hand. Raina hesitated. "I'm not very good at it." "Neither am I," he admitted. "But I think we're supposed to be making an impression tonight." As they stepped onto the dance floor, Dominic placed one hand gently on her waist. Raina was surprised by how naturally they moved together. "You lied," she said after a few moments. "You're a very good dancer." A small smile appeared on his face. "My mother insisted on lessons when I was young. She said every gentleman should know how to dance." "Tell me about her," Raina said. "Your mother." Something in Dominic's expression changed. "She was beautiful, a famous model in the 80s. She gave it all up when she married my father and had us." "You miss her," Raina observed. "She died when I was 22. Cancer. My father remarried within a year to a woman half his age." "I'm sorry," Raina said softly. "What about you? Your family?" Raina took a deep breath. "It's just me and my grandmother now. My mum left when I was 13. Decided she wanted a different life, I guess." Dominic's hand tightened slightly around hers. "Her loss." The simple words touched Raina deeply. They continued dancing, unaware that several people were watching them with great interest, including James Cross and Vanessa Morgan, who were having an intense conversation in a corner. "I told you bringing her was a bad idea," Vanessa hissed. "Look at them. He actually likes her." James frowned. That wasn't part of the plan. He was supposed to bring a date to soften his image for the board meeting next week, not fall for some nobody from the Bronx. "If he starts trusting her, she could ruin everything," Vanessa warned. "We need to make sure this little fairy tale ends tonight." After several dances, Dominic led Raina to a quieter area of the ballroom. "Would you like a drink?" he asked. "Just water, please," she replied. As Dominic walked to the bar, an elegant older woman approached Raina. "So you're the mystery woman who's captured Dominic's attention," she said. "I wouldn't say captured," Raina began, but the woman waved her hand dismissively. "I'm Eleanor Winters, head of the board at King & Cross. I've known Dominic since he was a boy." She studied Raina carefully. "What exactly do you want from him?" Raina blinked in surprise. "I don't want anything from him," Eleanor laughed. "My dear, everyone wants something from the Cross family. Money, power, connections, which is it for you?" "With all due respect, Mrs. Winters, you don't know me at all," Raina said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I'm here tonight because Dominic asked me to be, that's all." "Ah, first-name basis already," Eleanor noted. "Interesting. Well, let me give you some friendly advice. Dominic has a company to run. He doesn't need distractions." "I'm not a distraction," Raina insisted. "I work for the company too." "As an unpaid intern," Eleanor said dismissively. "Do you really think you belong in his world? Look around you, dear. These people eat girls like you for breakfast." Before Raina could respond, Dominic returned with their drinks. His eyes narrowed slightly when he saw Eleanor. "Eleanor?" he greeted coolly. I see you've met Raina. Just getting acquainted, Eleanor said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She's quite refreshing. As Eleanor walked away, Dominic turned to Raina. What did she say to you? Raina took a sip of water. Nothing I haven't heard before. Basically that I don't belong here. Dominic's jaw tightened. You belong anywhere you want to be, Raina. Do I? She asked quietly. Look around, Dominic. Everyone here comes from money and privilege. I'm from the Bronx. I take a 2-hour subway ride to an internship that doesn't even pay me. Why do you do it? He asked suddenly. Why work so hard for no money? Because I love it, she said simply. I love design. I love creating something beautiful from nothing, and I'm good at it, even if no one notices. I notice, Dominic said softly. Their eyes met, and Raina felt something shift between them. This no longer felt like a business arrangement or a dare. It felt real. The moment was interrupted by James, who appeared with a champagne glass in hand. Dom, the investors from Dubai are here. They're asking for you. Dominic hesitated, looking at Raina. Go, she encouraged him. It's why we're here, right? Business. As Dominic reluctantly walked away with his brother, Raina found herself alone. She decided to step out onto a balcony for some fresh air. The New York skyline sparkled before her, and she took a moment to absorb the beauty of it all. It's something, isn't it? Came a voice behind her. Raina turned to see an older man with silver hair leaning on a cane. It's beautiful, she agreed. Richard Cross, the man introduced himself. Dominic's father. Raina's eyes widened. Mr. Cross, it's an honor to meet you. Richard studied her with sharp eyes. So you're the intern my son brought to the gala. I flew in from Florida just to see this for myself. I'm sorry if my presence has caused any problems, Raina said cautiously. Do you know what built this company, Miss Mitchell? What made the Cross name what it is today? Hard work, Raina suggested. Richard laughed harshly. Strategy. Knowing which alliances to form, which bridges to build and which to burn. My son seems to have forgotten that. I think your son is a good man, Raina said firmly. Good men don't always make good businessmen, Richard replied. Dominic was on the right track until tonight. Bringing you here was a mistake. Raina felt her chest tighten. Why? Because I'm not wealthy? Because I don't have the right pedigree? Because you make him vulnerable, Richard said bluntly. I can see it in the way he looks at you. And vulnerability is weakness in our world. I think you're wrong, Raina said quietly. I think caring about people is what makes us human. Richard's expression hardened. Let me be clear, Miss Mitchell. My son has a legacy to protect. The board is voting next week on whether to keep him as CEO or replace him with someone more traditional. Your presence here tonight isn't helping his case. Raina felt as if she'd been slapped. I didn't know. Now you do, Richard said. If you care about him at all, you'll walk away tonight. With those words, he left her alone on the balcony. Raina stood there, shivering despite the warm evening, Richard's words echoing in her mind. When she finally went back inside, she saw Dominic searching the room. Their eyes met across the crowded ballroom, and he immediately made his way to her. There you are, he said, relief evident in his voice. I was worried you'd left. I met your father, Raina said quietly. Dominic's expression darkened. What did he say to you? He told me about the board vote next week, about your position as CEO being in jeopardy. He had no right to involve you in that, Dominic said angrily. Is it true? Raina pressed. Is your job at risk because you brought me here tonight? Dominic ran a hand through his hair. It's complicated. The board thinks I'm too young, too modern in my approach. They want someone who'll maintain the status quo. And bringing an unpaid intern from the Bronx as your date doesn't help that image, Raina concluded. I don't care what they think, Dominic insisted. For the first time in years, I'm making my own choice, not one dictated by the company or my father. Raina felt torn. On one hand, his words warmed her heart. On the other hand, she couldn't bear the thought of being responsible for him losing everything he'd worked for. Maybe we should leave, she suggested. We've made our appearance. Dominic studied her face. Did my father threaten you? No, she said truthfully. He just made me see things more clearly. Before Dominic could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught everyone's attention. Cameras flashed as a stunning woman in a silver gown made a dramatic entrance. Who's that? Raina asked. Dominic's expression was unreadable. Sophia Reeves, my ex-fiancée. Raina watched as the beautiful woman made her way through the crowd, stopping to greet people with practiced charm. When Sophia spotted Dominic, she headed straight for them. Dominic, darling, she said, air kissing both his cheeks. "I've missed you." She turned to Raina with a polite smile. "And who's your friend?" "Raina Mitchell," Dominic said. "Raina, this is Sophia Reeves." "Lovely to meet you," Sophia said, though her eyes were already back on Dominic. "Your father called me. He thought it might be good for us to reconnect." Raina felt like she was watching a carefully orchestrated play. Richard Cross had summoned Sophia to remind Dominic of the kind of woman he was supposed to be with, someone from his world. "If you'll excuse me," Raina said quietly, "I need to use the restroom." Neither Dominic nor Sophia seemed to notice as she slipped away. In the elegant bathroom, Raina stared at her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was beautiful in the expensive dress, but she wasn't real. This wasn't her world. When she returned to the ballroom, she saw Dominic dancing with Sophia. They looked perfect together, both tall, elegant, and clearly from the same world of privilege. Several photographers were capturing the moment. James appeared beside Raina. "They make a beautiful couple, don't they?" "Yes," Raina admitted, her heart sinking. "They do." "Sophia's father owns 3 fashion magazines and a chain of luxury boutiques across Europe," James said casually. "The board always hoped they would get back together. It would be a perfect business alliance." "I should go," Raina said suddenly. "This was a mistake." James looked surprised. "You can't just leave. What about Dominic?" "He's exactly where he should be," Raina said, gesturing toward Dominic and Sophia, "with someone who won't cost him his company." Before James could stop her, Raina made her way to the exit. Outside, she asked the valet to call her a taxi. "Raina," Dominic's voice called out behind her, "where are you going?" She turned to face him. "Home, where I belong." "What happened?" he asked, confusion in his eyes. "1 minute we were talking and the next you disappeared. I saw you with Sophia," Raina explained. "You looked right together." "That was nothing," Dominic insisted. "My father invited her without telling me. It was a setup." "Maybe it was," Raina acknowledged, "but maybe he's right. You have a company to run, a board vote to win. You don't need someone like me complicating things." Dominic stepped closer. "What if I want complications? What if, for once in my life, I want something real instead of something convenient?" His words made Raina's heart race, but she forced herself to be practical. "We barely know each other, Dominic. This whole night has been artificial. A business arrangement, like you said. It started that way," he admitted, "but something changed. You changed me." For a moment, Raina allowed herself to believe him, but then she saw Richard Cross watching them from the entrance, his disapproval evident. Behind him stood Eleanor Winters and several other board members, all witnessing the scene. "I can't be responsible for you losing everything you've worked for," Raina said softly. "Your father told me about the board vote. If they see you with me instead of someone like Sophia—" "I don't care what they see," Dominic insisted. "But you should," Raina countered. "King and Cross is your legacy. I won't be the reason you lose it." Her taxi arrived, and she opened the door. "Raina, please," Dominic said, his voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Don't go." She looked at him one last time. "Thank you for tonight, Mr. Cross." It was like a fairy tale. "But midnight has struck, and it's time for me to go back to reality." With those words, she got into the taxi and closed the door, leaving Dominic standing alone on the sidewalk. As the taxi pulled away, she finally allowed the tears she'd been holding back to fall. The next morning, Raina's grandmother found her sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a cup of cold coffee. "You got in late," Eloise observed. "Must have been some party." "It was," Raina said quietly. Eloise sat down across from her. "So why do you look like someone just broke your heart?" "Because I think I might have broken his," Raina admitted, "and my own in the process." She explained everything that had happened at the gala, meeting Richard Cross, learning about the board vote, seeing Dominic with Sophia, and her decision to leave. "You did what you thought was right," Eloise said gently. "But are you sure it was right for you, or just right for him?" Raina sighed. "What difference does it make? We come from different worlds." "Your mother used to say the same thing about your father," Eloise remarked. "That's why she left. She thought she deserved more than a hard-working man who loved her." Raina looked up in surprise. Her grandmother rarely spoke about her mother's abandonment. "What are you saying, Grandma?" "I'm saying sometimes we push away the very things we need most because we're afraid we don't deserve them," Eloise explained. "Don't make your mother's mistake." Before Raina could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID showed unknown, but she answered anyway. "Hello? Ms. Mitchell?" came a familiar voice. "This is Victoria Powell, Mr. Cross's assistant." Raina's heart sank. She was probably calling to arrange for the return of the dress. Yes, this is Raina. Mr. Cross would like to see you in his office on Monday morning at 9 a.m. Raina closed her eyes. Is this about last night? About me leaving early? I'm not at liberty to discuss the matter, Victoria replied formally. Will you be there? After a moment's hesitation, Raina said, Yes, I'll be there. As she hung up, Eloise gave her a questioning look. What was that about? I'm not sure, Raina admitted, but I think I might be about to lose my internship. Meanwhile, Dominic sat in his office, staring out at the New York skyline. He hadn't slept all night, replaying his conversation with Raina over and over in his mind. James entered without knocking as usual. You look terrible. Thank you for that assessment, Dominic said dryly. The papers are having a field day, James reported, tossing several newspapers onto Dominic's desk. Your mystery date is all anyone can talk about. Dominic glanced at the headlines. Crosshair brings unknown date to gala. Dominic Cross's Cinderella moment. Who is the mystery woman who captured Cross's heart? There were photos of them dancing, talking closely, looking at each other in ways that even Dominic couldn't dismiss as merely professional. The board called an emergency meeting for this afternoon, James continued. Father's furious. He says you embarrassed the family by bringing an intern and then causing a scene when she left. I didn't cause a scene, Dominic said sharply. I tried to stop her from leaving. Same difference to them, James shrugged. What were you thinking running after her like that? Everyone saw you. Dominic stood up abruptly. I was thinking that for once in my life, I found someone who sees me as a person, not just the CEO of King & Cross. James looked at his brother with surprise. You actually care about her? I do, Dominic admitted, and I'm not going to let her disappear. What about the board vote? About Sophia? Father practically promised her family you two would reconcile. I don't care, Dominic said firmly. I'm done living my life according to what's best for the company image, even if it costs you everything, James asked seriously. Dominic thought about Raina, her honesty, her talent, the way she stood up to him when everyone else just nodded and agreed. Some things are worth the risk, he said finally. As James left, Dominic picked up the phone and called Victoria. I need you to arrange a meeting with Raina Mitchell on Monday morning. Of course, Mr. Cross. Regarding? Dominic thought for a moment. Tell her it's about her future at King & Cross. After hanging up, he turned back to the window, a plan forming in his mind. The board might want a traditional CEO who made safe choices and married the right kind of woman. But Dominic was done playing by their rules. For the first time in years, he knew exactly what he wanted. Now he just had to convince Raina that what they had found together was worth fighting for. The weekend passed slowly for Raina. She spent most of it helping her grandmother with chores and trying not to think about Dominic Cross. By Monday morning, she had convinced herself that he was going to fire her for embarrassing him at the gala. She arrived at King & Cross headquarters early, wearing her simplest black dress and a borrowed cardigan. As she rode the elevator to the executive floor, her stomach twisted with anxiety. Victoria greeted her with the same cool efficiency as always. Ms. Mitchell, Mr. Cross is expecting you. When Raina entered Dominic's office, he was standing by the window. He turned as she came in, and for a brief moment, his professional mask slipped, revealing what looked like relief. Raina, he said, thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? She asked, echoing their conversation from the night of the gala. A small smile touched his lips. We always have choices. That's what I've realized. Raina remained standing, too nervous to sit. If you're going to fire me, I understand. I embarrassed you by leaving the gala early. Fire you? Dominic looked genuinely surprised. That's the last thing I want to do. Then why am I here? Dominic took a deep breath. To offer you a job. A real one, with a salary and benefits. Raina blinked in surprise. What? I reviewed your work over the weekend, Dominic explained, gesturing to several design portfolios on his desk. The asymmetrical necklines you mentioned to Vanessa? They're brilliant. So are your ideas for sustainable fabrics and inclusive sizing. You looked at my designs. I did, Dominic confirmed. And I want to create a new position for you. Junior designer reporting directly to the head of the department. Raina's mind raced. This was everything she had worked for. A real chance to prove herself, but something didn't feel right. Is this because of what happened between us? She asked cautiously. Because I don't want special treatment. Dominic approached her slowly. This is because you're talented, Raina. Because you deserve recognition for your work. The fact that I can't stop thinking about you is a separate issue. Her heart skipped a beat at his words. Dominic, The board is meeting this afternoon, he continued. They'll vote on whether to keep me as CEO or replace me with someone more traditional, someone who dates the right kind of women and makes the safe business choices. Like reconciling with Sophia, Raina guessed. Dominic nodded. That's what my father wants, what the board expects. And what do you want? Raina asked softly. I want to run this company my way, Dominic said firmly. And I want you in my life, Raina. Not as an employee, not as a date for a gala, but as yourself. The woman who walked into that conference room and changed everything. Before Raina could respond, the door opened and Richard Cross walked in without knocking. Dominic, we need to talk about the board. He stopped when he saw Raina. Miss Mitchell, I'm surprised to see you here. Father, Dominic acknowledged coldly. We're in the middle of something. Richard's eyes narrowed. The board meeting is in 2 hours. Sophia and her father will be there. They expect an announcement about your reconciliation. That's not going to happen, Dominic said firmly. Richard turned to Raina. I thought you understood what was at stake here. I thought you cared enough about my son to walk away. I do care, Raina said quietly. That's why I'm here. To cost him his company? Richard demanded. No, Dominic interrupted. To remind me why the company is worth fighting for in the first place. Because of people like Raina. Talented, honest people who bring fresh ideas and real passion to their work. Richard shook his head. You're making a mistake, son. The board won't accept this. Then maybe it's time for a new board, Dominic said calmly. Times are changing, Father. King and Cross needs to change too. Richard stared at his son for a long moment, then turned and walked out without another word. When they were alone again, Raina looked at Dominic with concern. Are you sure about this? You could lose everything. Not everything, Dominic said, taking her hand. Not if you're with me. Raina's heart raced. The board meeting is in 2 hours. What are you going to do? Dominic smiled, a real smile that transformed his usually serious face. I'm going to tell them the truth, about the company's future, about my vision, and about us. Us? Raina repeated. If you want there to be an us, Dominic said, suddenly looking uncertain. I know it's fast and I know we come from different worlds, but Raina silenced him by stepping closer. Different worlds doesn't have to mean separate worlds. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then Dominic leaned down and kissed her gently. It was a question, a promise, a beginning. When they finally pulled apart, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. So, Miss Mitchell, will you accept the position? Raina smiled. Which one? Junior designer or girlfriend of the CEO? Both, Dominic said. Definitely both. As they stood together by the window, overlooking the city they both loved, Raina thought about the night she'd walked into that conference room, carrying a stack of forgotten sketches. She had no idea then that she was walking into her future. Sometimes the most unexpected entrances lead to the most extraordinary journeys. The King and Cross boardroom was silent as Dominic Cross finished his presentation. 20 stern faces stared back at him, some showing surprise, others disapproval. He had just outlined his vision for the company's future, a bold plan that involved sustainable practices, diverse models, and innovative designs from fresh talent like Raina. Thank you for your time, Dominic said, standing tall at the head of the table. Now I'll answer any questions you might have. Eleanor Winters was the first to speak. This is all very modern, Dominic, but King and Cross has always catered to a specific clientele, high-end, traditional luxury. What you're proposing could alienate our core customers, or it could attract new ones, Dominic countered. The fashion world is changing. Either we change with it, or we get left behind. Richard Cross, sitting at the opposite end of the table, leaned forward. And what about your personal life? The tabloids are full of rumors about you and that intern after the gala. Dominic met his father's gaze steadily. Her name is Raina Mitchell, and yes, I am seeing her. My personal life, however, is not up for a vote today. It reflects on the company, Richard insisted. Sophia's father was very disappointed when you didn't announce your reconciliation. That alliance would have opened doors in Europe. I'm not a pawn to be moved around for business alliances, Dominic said firmly, and neither is Raina. The board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. This was not the compliant CEO they had expected. I believe, Dominic continued, that authenticity is our greatest strength, both in our designs and in our leadership. As the board began their private deliberations, Dominic stepped outside. James was waiting in the hallway. How did it go? James asked. As well as could be expected, Dominic replied. Father is pushing hard for them to replace me. James looked troubled. You know, I never thought you'd actually stand up to him like this. especially not over a woman. It's not just about Raina, Dominic said. It's about being true to myself for once, about running the company the way I believe it should be run. James studied his brother carefully. You've changed. I hope so, Dominic said with a small smile. Victoria approached them, her expression tense. Mr. Cross, there's a situation downstairs. Ms. Mitchell was confronted by Sophia Reeves in the lobby. Security had to intervene. Dominic's face darkened. Is Raina all right? She's in your office, Victoria replied. Ms. Reeves was asked to leave the building. Without waiting for the board's decision, Dominic headed for the elevator. When he reached his office, he found Raina sitting on the couch, looking shaken but composed. Raina, he said, immediately going to her side. What happened? She looked up at him, her eyes troubled. Sophia happened. She came here to warn me about you, said I was just a novelty, that you'd get bored and go back to women like her. Dominic took her hands in his. That's not going to happen. She also mentioned something about James, Raina continued. Something about a plan they had together. Do you know what she meant? Dominic frowned. No, but I intend to find out. As if on cue, James appeared in the doorway. Dom, the board wants you back. They're ready to vote. He stopped when he saw Raina. What's she doing here? She was just accosted by Sophia in our lobby, Dominic said coldly. Did you have something to do with that? James's expression flickered. Of course not. Why would I? What plan, James? Dominic interrupted. What plan did you and Sophia have? Before James could answer, Dominic's phone rang. It was Eleanor Winters. The board was waiting. We'll finish this later, Dominic told his brother. He turned to Raina. Wait here, please. As Dominic headed back to the boardroom, Raina was left alone with James. An uncomfortable silence filled the room. He really cares about you, James said finally. I haven't seen him like this in years. Is that why you and Sophia were trying to break us up? Raina asked directly. James had the grace to look embarrassed. It wasn't like that. Not exactly. Then what was it like? Raina pressed. James sighed, sitting down across from her. Dominic has always been the golden boy, the perfect son. I was just the spare. When father retired, there was never any question who would take over. You resent him, Raina observed. I admire him, James corrected. But yes, sometimes I resent him too. When Sophia approached me with her plan, I thought it made sense. If Dom reconciled with her, the board would be happy, father would be happy, and the company would secure the Reeves connection. And what would you get out of it? Raina asked. James looked away. A seat on the board, and Sophia promised to put in a good word with her father about my fashion line ideas. You sold out your own brother for a business opportunity, Raina said, her voice filled with disappointment. I didn't think he'd actually fall for you, James burst out. It was supposed to be one night, a PR stunt. You were supposed to be forgettable. Raina stood up. Well, I'm sorry to have ruined your plans, but I'm not going anywhere, James. Not unless Dominic asks me to. In the boardroom, the atmosphere was tense as Eleanor Winters announced the results of the vote. By a margin of 11-9, she said, the board has decided to retain Dominic Cross as CEO of King & Cross. A ripple of surprise went through the room. Dominic had won, but barely. However, Eleanor continued, we have conditions. While we are willing to explore some of your more progressive ideas, we expect you to maintain the company's prestigious image. That includes your personal conduct. Richard Cross stood up. This is a mistake. My son is clearly not thinking with his head right now. The board has spoken, Richard, Eleanor said firmly. Dominic stays. As the meeting adjourned, board members filed out. Some congratulated Dominic, others merely nodded coolly. Richard was the last to leave. You won this round, he told his son, but at what cost? The company has been in our family for 3 generations. Your grandfather would be ashamed. Grandfather was an innovator, Dominic replied. He never feared change. That's a lesson you forgot, father. Richard's face hardened. You think you love this girl, but love doesn't last in our world, Dominic. Business is what endures. I'm not choosing between Raina and the business, Dominic said. I'm choosing to have both on my terms. As Richard walked away, Eleanor approached Dominic. That was a close vote, Dominic. Too close. Don't make us regret our decision. When Dominic returned to his office, he found Raina alone, looking out at the city. You're still CEO, she said, turning to face him. It wasn't a question. She could see it in his eyes. By a narrow margin, he confirmed. But yes, I'm still here. And us? Raina asked quietly. Are we still? Dominic crossed the room and took her in his arms. More than ever. But I need to tell you something. The board made it clear that my personal life will be scrutinized more than ever. Being with me won't be easy, Raina. Nothing worth having ever is, she replied, smiling up at him. As they embraced, neither noticed James watching from the doorway, his expression unreadable. 3 months passed. Spring came to New York, bringing new beginnings. Raina thrived in her role as junior designer, earning respect for her talent rather than her connection to Dominic. They kept their relationship professional at work, though everyone knew they were together. One sunny afternoon, Raina was working late in the design studio when Victoria appeared. "Miss Mitchell, there's someone here to see you," she said. "A Diana Mitchell. She says she's your mother." Raina froze. Her mother, after 12 years of silence. "Should I send her away?" Victoria asked, noting Raina's reaction. "No," Raina said after a moment. "I'll see her." When Diana Mitchell walked into the studio, Raina barely recognized her. The woman who had abandoned her was now in her late 40s, elegantly dressed with the same warm brown eyes as Raina's, though lined with age. "Raina," Diana said, her voice thick with emotion. "Look at you." Raina stood stiffly behind her desk. "What are you doing here, Mum?" "I saw you in the papers," Diana explained, "with Dominic Cross, my daughter, dating one of the most eligible bachelors in New York." She laughed nervously. "I could hardly believe it. So you came back because I'm dating someone important?" Raina asked coldly. "Not because you missed me for 12 years. Diana's smile faltered. "I deserve that. But I did miss you, Raina. Every day." "Then why did you leave? Why didn't you call or write or anything?" Diana sighed, looking suddenly older. "I was selfish. I felt trapped in the Bronx, in that small apartment with your grandmother watching my every move. I thought I deserved more, deserved better." The words echoed what Eloise had told Raina about her mother. "And did you find it? This better life you were looking for?" Diana's eyes filled with tears. "I found money, for a while. Nice clothes, nice restaurants. But not happiness, never that." "What do you want from me?" Raina asked directly. "A chance," Diana said simply, "a chance to know the amazing woman my daughter has become." Raina felt torn. Part of her wanted to forgive her mother, to have her back in her life. Another part remembered the pain of abandonment, the birthdays and holidays spent wondering why she hadn't been enough. "I need time," Raina said finally. "This is a lot to process." Diana nodded, placing a business card on Raina's desk. "I understand. I'm staying at the Regent Hotel. I'll be in New York for 2 weeks." After her mother left, Raina sat alone in the studio, emotions swirling inside her. That's how Dominic found her an hour later. "Raina," he called, concerned by her distant expression. "What's wrong?" "My mother came to see me," she said quietly. After 12 years, Dominic sat beside her, taking her hand. "What did she want?" "A second chance," Raina said. "She saw us in the papers, that's why she came back." "Does that matter?" Dominic asked gently. "Her reasons?" Raina looked at him. "Wouldn't it matter to you if someone only wanted to be in your life because of what you have, not who you are?" Dominic's expression softened. "That's been the story of my life, Raina, until you." "I don't know what to do," she admitted. "Part of me wants to forgive her, but another part is afraid she'll hurt you again." Dominic finished. "I understand that better than most." He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "Whatever you decide, I'm here." As Raina rested her head against his chest, she marveled at how far they'd come. From a chance meeting in a conference room to this, a love that gave her strength even in her most vulnerable moments. The next evening, Raina decided to meet her mother for dinner. She chose a small restaurant in the Bronx, not far from where they used to live. Diana was already waiting when Raina arrived. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said. "Neither was I," Raina admitted, sitting down across from her. They ordered drinks, and an awkward silence fell between them. "So," Diana said finally, "you and Dominic Cross. How did that happen?" Raina gave her the simplified version, the internship, the gala, the aftermath. She left out the more personal details, still unsure how much of herself she wanted to share with this woman, who was both familiar and a stranger. "You love him," Diana observed as Raina finished her story. "I do," Raina acknowledged, "but not because of his name or his money." "I believe you," Diana said. "You were always the strong one, even as a child. You knew your own mind." "I had to," Raina said pointedly. "After you left." Diana flinched, but didn't look away. "I know I hurt you, Raina. I can never undo that, but I want you to know that leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life." "Why now?" Raina asked. "Why come back after all these years?" Diana hesitated. "Honestly, I'm sick, Raina. Cancer. The doctors say I have maybe a year, possibly less. Raina felt like the air had been knocked out of her lungs. Cancer? Pancreatic, Diana confirmed. By the time they found it, it had already spread. Does Grandma know? Diana shook her head. You're the first person I've told. Raina didn't know what to feel. Anger, grief, confusion, they all swirled together inside her. I'm not telling you this for sympathy, Diana continued, but when I saw you in those papers, looking so beautiful and successful, I realized I couldn't die without at least trying to make amends. Tears filled Raina's eyes. You can't just come back into my life and then leave again. I know, Diana said softly. It's not fair. None of this is fair. By the end of the evening, Raina had invited her mother to meet Eloise. It was time for healing, even if that healing came with an expiration date. A week later, Raina was working in the design studio when James entered, looking unusually serious. Can we talk? He asked. Raina nodded cautiously. They hadn't spoken much since his confession about the plan with Sophia. I owe you an apology, James said, sitting down across from her. What I did with Sophia, it was wrong. Yes, it was, Raina agreed. Why the change of heart? James sighed. Because I've seen how happy you make my brother, and because, he hesitated, because Sophia betrayed me too. She was just using me to get back to Dominic. I'm sorry, Raina said, and meant it. Despite everything, she didn't think James was a bad person, just misguided. There's something else, James continued. Something you should know. Vanessa Morgan is back in town. She's been meeting with father. Raina frowned. Vanessa, the one who sold company secrets. The very same, James confirmed. They're planning something, Raina. I don't know what, but it can't be good for Dominic. Why are you telling me this? James looked her in the eye. Because my brother deserves better than our father's manipulations, and because I think you're the only one who can help him. After James left, Raina immediately called Dominic. He was in Milan for a fashion show, but answered on the first ring. I miss you, he said by way of greeting. I miss you too, Raina replied, but that's not why I'm calling. James just told me that your father is meeting with Vanessa Morgan. There was a pause. Are you sure? James seemed certain, Raina confirmed. He thinks they're planning something against you. Dominic sighed heavily. My father has never accepted my vision for the company, but bringing Vanessa back into the picture, that's a new low. What should we do? Nothing for now, Dominic decided. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll figure it out together. After they hung up, Raina couldn't shake her unease. She knew Richard Cross was a formidable opponent, and Vanessa had already betrayed Dominic once. That evening, as Raina left the building, she found a sleek black car waiting at the curb. The window rolled down to reveal Richard Cross. Ms. Mitchell, he said, may I offer you a ride? Every instinct told Raina to refuse, but curiosity won out. Where to? Just a short drive, Richard said. I think it's time we had a real conversation. Against her better judgment, Raina got into the car. They drove in silence for several minutes before Richard spoke. I underestimated you, he admitted. I thought you were after my son's money, his position. I never was, Raina said simply. I realize that now, Richard acknowledged. Which makes what I have to offer you all the more valuable. Raina tensed. What are you talking about? Richard reached into his jacket and pulled out a check. $5 million. Raina stared at the check in disbelief. Excuse me? $5 million, Richard repeated. For you to walk away from my son, start your own design label, live comfortably, whatever you want. You can't be serious, Raina said, anger rising in her. You think you can buy me off? I think I'm offering you freedom, Richard countered. Freedom from the scrutiny, the expectations, the pressure of being with someone like Dominic. I love your son, Raina said firmly. No amount of money will change that. Richard's expression hardened. Love fades, Ms. Mitchell, believe me, I know, but opportunity, that's rare. Stop the car, Raina demanded. Now. To her surprise, Richard complied, instructing the driver to pull over. Think about it, he said as she opened the door. The offer stands for 48 hours. Raina got out, slamming the door behind her. As the car pulled away, she realized she was shaking, not with fear, but with rage. How dare he think she could be bought? She hailed a taxi and directed it to her grandmother's apartment. When she arrived, she found not only Eloise waiting, but her mother as well. The two older women had been talking, their expressions somber. What happened? Eloise asked immediately, seeing Raina's face. Raina told them about Richard's offer, her voice tight with anger. The nerve of that man, Eloise huffed, thinking he can buy people like their stocks. Diana was quieter, studying her daughter. What will you do? I'll tell Dominic, of course, Raina said. He deserves to know what his father tried to do. And then, Diana pressed. Raina looked between her mother and grandmother, the two women who represented such different choices in life. And then we'll face whatever comes together, because that's what people do when they love each other. They don't run away when things get hard. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Diana looked down, tears in her eyes. You're right, she said softly. I should have fought harder for what mattered, for who mattered. Raina felt some of her anger dissolve. It's not too late, Mom, not for us. As the three women embraced, Raina knew she'd made her decision. No amount of money could replace what she'd found with Dominic, a love worth fighting for, worth standing up for, even against the powerful Richard Cross. Tomorrow, when Dominic returned from Milan, she would tell him everything, about his father's bribe, about Vanessa's return, about her mother's illness. They would face it all together, because sometimes the intern who walks in changes everything, not just for the CEO but for herself as well. Dominic Cross returned from Milan the next morning, tired from the long flight, but eager to see Raina. When his car pulled up to King & Cross headquarters, he was surprised to find her waiting outside the building. Raina, he said, pulling her into his arms, I wasn't expecting you here. We need to talk, she said, her expression serious. Not at the office. They went to a small cafe around the corner, finding a quiet table in the back. Raina took a deep breath before telling him about his father's offer. $5 million, she said. That's how much your father thinks it will take for me to leave you. Dominic's face darkened with anger. I'm going to kill him. No, you're not, Raina said firmly. That's exactly what he wants, to drive a wedge between us. Did James know about this? Dominic asked. I don't think so, Raina replied. Actually, James was the one who warned me about your father meeting with Vanessa. Dominic ran a hand through his hair in frustration. My father has crossed a line, trying to buy you off, bringing Vanessa back into the picture. He's desperate to regain control. The question is why, Raina said thoughtfully. Why now? The board already voted to keep you as CEO. By a slim margin, Dominic reminded her. And there's another vote scheduled in 3 months. My father is probably trying to make sure I don't win that one. Raina reached across the table to take his hand. Then we need to make sure you do. Dominic looked at her with admiration. Most people would have taken the money and run. I'm not most people, Raina said with a small smile. And I don't run when things get hard. Her words reminded her of her conversation with her mother. There's something else I need to tell you. My mother is back. Dominic looked surprised. After all these years? She's sick, Raina explained. Pancreatic cancer. The doctors have given her about a year. Oh, Raina, Dominic said softly. I'm so sorry. It's strange, Raina admitted. All these years, I imagined confronting her, making her feel guilty for abandoning us. But now that she's dying, all that anger seems pointless. What does your grandmother think? They've been talking, Raina said. There's a lot of hurt there, but they're trying. For my sake, I think. Dominic nodded thoughtfully. Family is complicated. Believe me, I understand that better than most. As they left the cafe, Dominic put his arm around Raina's shoulders. We'll face all of this together. My father, Vanessa, your mother, all of it. Together, Raina agreed, leaning into him. Later that day, Dominic confronted his father in Richard's penthouse apartment. The older Cross was nursing a whiskey despite the early hour. I know what you did, Dominic said without preamble. Trying to bribe Raina to leave me. Richard didn't deny it. I was testing her. Testing her, Dominic repeated incredulously. She's not one of your business acquisitions, father. Isn't she? Richard shot back. You barely know this girl, Dominic. I was protecting you and the company. By offering her $5 million? By conspiring with Vanessa Morgan of all people? Richard's expression revealed nothing. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, Dominic said coldly. James told Raina he saw you meeting with Vanessa. For a moment, Richard looked genuinely surprised. Then he laughed bitterly. James. Of course. Your brother has always been easily manipulated. What does that mean? It means, son, that you should be careful who you trust, Richard warned. Even family. Dominic studied his father's face. What are you planning, father? What's your end game here? Richard sighed, suddenly looking every one of his 65 years. I built King & Cross from a small fashion house into an empire. Everything I did, every sacrifice, every hard choice, was for this family, for our legacy. And I'm grateful for that, Dominic said. But times have changed. The company needs to change too. Into what? Richard demanded. Some progressive playground where profit takes a backseat to your idealistic notions. Into a company that values talent and innovation over tradition and connections, Dominic corrected. A company that can thrive in the modern world. Richard shook his head. You're making a mistake. That girl has clouded your judgment. No, Dominic said firmly. Raina has cleared it. For the first time in years, I'm seeing things as they really are. As Dominic turned to leave, Richard called after him. The board won't stand for this, Dominic. When the vote comes around again, you won't be so lucky. We'll see about that, Dominic replied, closing the door behind him. Meanwhile, Raina was having lunch with her mother and grandmother. It was strange seeing the two women together after so many years, but not unpleasant. I've been thinking, Diana said, picking at her salad. I want to make things right before... She didn't finish the sentence, but they all knew what she meant, before she died. How do you plan to do that? Eloise asked, not unkindly. I've saved some money over the years, Diana explained. Not a lot, but enough to help with the rent. Maybe set up a college fund for any grandchildren that might come along. She glanced meaningfully at Raina, who blushed. We're not quite there yet, Mom. But you love him, Diana pressed. This Dominic of yours. I do, Raina admitted, but we still have a lot to figure out. Like what his father is plotting? Eloise asked shrewdly. Raina had told them about Richard's bribe, but not about the suspected conspiracy with Vanessa. Now she filled them in on the latest developments. This Vanessa woman, Diana said thoughtfully. She betrayed Dominic once before? Raina nodded. She sold company secrets to a competitor. Nearly cost King and Cross millions. And she dated Dominic before that? Eloise asked. Yes, Raina confirmed. She broke his heart and his trust. Diana and Eloise exchanged a look. Sounds to me like this woman might be the key, Diana said. If she betrayed Dominic once, she might betray Richard too, for the right price. Mom, Raina exclaimed, are you suggesting I bribe Vanessa? Not bribe, Diana corrected. Negotiate. Women like Vanessa respect power and money. They understand transactions. Raina was shocked by her mother's ruthless assessment, but part of her wondered if Diana might be right. At King and Cross, James was going through old financial records when Dominic found him. We need to talk, Dominic said, closing the office door behind him. James looked up warily. About father? I assume Raina told you about the meetings with Vanessa. She did, Dominic confirmed, but I just spoke to father and something doesn't add up. He seemed surprised that you knew about Vanessa. James shifted uncomfortably. Maybe he didn't expect me to notice. Or maybe, Dominic said slowly, there's more to this story than you're telling us. James hesitated, then sighed in defeat. I didn't want to believe it at first, but I found something. He pushed a folder across the desk. Financial records from the last year. Large sums being moved to offshore accounts. Dominic frowned as he looked through the papers. These are all authorized by father. Look at the dates, James urged. They correspond with board meetings, votes, key decisions. Dominic's eyes widened as he made the connection. He's been bribing board members. Some of them, James confirmed, enough to sway votes his way. I think that's why he's so confident about the next vote. He's already bought the outcome. But what does Vanessa have to do with this? James looked troubled. I don't know, but I did find one more thing. He pulled up an email on his computer. This was sent from father's account to Vanessa last week. Dominic read the email, his face growing darker with each line. It outlined a plan to discredit him publicly, planted stories about mismanagement, fabricated evidence of inappropriate relationships with employees, carefully timed leaks to the press. He's planning to destroy me, Dominic said quietly. I'm sorry, Dom, James said, genuine regret in his voice. I should have come to you sooner. Dominic looked at his brother searchingly. Why didn't you? James couldn't meet his eyes. Because part of me was still jealous, still resentful that you got everything I wanted, the company, the respect, and now Raina. You wanted Raina? Dominic asked, surprised. Not specifically, James clarified, but someone like her, someone who sees past the cross name to the person behind it. The brothers sat in silence for a moment. It's not too late to fix this, Dominic said finally. We need proof of the bribes, enough to force the corrupt board members to resign. And what about father? James asked. Dominic's expression was resolute. It's time for Richard Cross to fully retire, from the company and from our lives. That evening, Raina received an unexpected call from Vanessa Morgan. I know who you are, Vanessa said, without preamble. The intern who captured Dominic's heart. How quaint. What do you want, Vanessa? Raina asked directly. To meet, Vanessa replied. Just the two of us. woman to woman. Every instinct told Raina this was a trap, but she remembered her mother's words about Vanessa being the key. When and where? They arranged to meet at a small bar in Chelsea, neutral territory for both of them. When Raina arrived, Vanessa was already there, looking as glamorous as ever in a designer dress that probably cost more than Raina's monthly rent. "You're prettier in person," Vanessa observed as Raina sat down. "I can almost see the appeal." "Let's skip the fake pleasantries," Raina suggested. "Why did you want to meet?" Vanessa smiled, impressed by Raina's directness. "I like you already." So refreshingly blunt. She sipped her martini. "I wanted to meet the woman who did what I couldn't, tame Dominic Cross." "I didn't tame him," Raina corrected. "I love him." "Love," Vanessa repeated, as if the word tasted strange. "I thought I loved him once, but power is more seductive than love in our world." "Is that why you're working with Richard? For power?" Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "You're well informed. Yes, Richard made me an interesting offer. Help him remove Dominic from the company, and I get a significant stake in the business." "Why are you telling me this?" Raina asked suspiciously. "Because Richard made a mistake," Vanessa said, leaning closer. "He assumed my loyalty could be bought once and for all, but I'm more of a free agent." "Meaning?" "Meaning I go with the winning side," Vanessa explained. "And right now I'm not sure which side that is. Richard has money and influence, but Dominic has vision and passion, and he has you." Raina studied the woman across from her. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Information," Vanessa said simply. "Richard plans to present evidence at the next board meeting, evidence that Dominic has been embezzling company funds." "That's ridiculous," Raina said. "Dominic would never do that." "Of course not," Vanessa agreed. "But Richard has been very careful about creating a paper trail that suggests otherwise. Bank transfers, falsified signatures, the works." Raina felt cold. "And you're helping him with this?" "I was," Vanessa admitted. "But I'm considering a change of allegiance. For the right incentive, of course." "I don't have money to bribe you with," Raina said flatly. Vanessa laughed. "I don't want your money, darling. I want a position at King & Cross, head of international marketing." Raina stared at her in disbelief. "After everything you've done, you betrayed the company once before." "Business is business," Vanessa shrugged. "And I'm very good at what I do. Ask Dominic about the campaigns I ran when we were together. Record sales every time." Raina couldn't believe the woman's audacity. "I'll have to discuss this with Dominic." "Of course," Vanessa said smoothly. "But don't take too long. The board meeting is in 2 weeks and Richard is very thorough in his planning." As Raina left the bar, her mind was racing. Could she trust Vanessa? Probably not. But the information about Richard's plan to frame Dominic for embezzlement was too important to ignore. When Raina returned to Dominic's penthouse that night, she found him and James huddled over financial records in the living room. "What's going on?" she asked. "We found evidence that father has been bribing board members," Dominic explained grimly. "He's been planning to force me out for months." "It gets worse," Raina said, sitting down beside him. "I just met with Vanessa Morgan." Both brothers looked at her in shock. "You what?" Dominic exclaimed. "She called me," Raina explained. "She told me Richard is planning to frame you for embezzlement at the next board meeting. He's created fake evidence, forged documents." James cursed under his breath. "That explains the offshore accounts. He wasn't just using them for bribes. Vanessa offered to help us," Raina continued, "in exchange for a position at the company." Dominic laughed bitterly. "Of course she did. Vanessa never does anything without getting something in return." "Can we trust her?" Raina asked. "No," Dominic said firmly, "but we can use her. If she has access to the fake evidence, we need it." "What are you thinking, Dom?" James asked. Dominic's eyes were cold with determination. "I'm thinking it's time to beat father at his own game." The next 2 weeks were a flurry of activity. Dominic, James, and Raina worked tirelessly, gathering evidence, making plans, preparing for the showdown with Richard. Vanessa provided them with copies of the falsified documents, though Dominic was careful not to promise her anything concrete in return. Meanwhile, Raina spent as much time as she could with her mother. Diana's health was deteriorating faster than expected, and the doctors had revised their estimate from a year to a few months. "I don't want you worrying about me," Diana told Raina during one of their visits. "You have enough on your plate with Dominic's situation." "You're my mother," Raina said simply. "Of course I worry about you." Diana took her daughter's hand. "I've been thinking about what you said, about not running when things get hard. I ran from everything difficult in my life. Your father, motherhood, responsibility. Don't make my mistakes, Raina. I won't, Raina promised. On the morning of the board meeting, Raina woke early in Dominic's bed. He was already awake, staring at the ceiling. Nervous? She asked, propping herself up on one elbow. Not nervous, he replied. Just ready for this to be over. Whatever happens today, Raina said, we'll face it together. Dominic turned to look at her, his eyes filled with emotion. I love you, Raina Mitchell, you know that, right? I know, she said softly. I love you too. The boardroom was tense as the meeting began. All 20 board members were present, along with Richard Cross, who sat confidently at the far end of the table. Dominic took his place at the head, with James beside him. Raina and Victoria waited outside, ready if needed. Eleanor Winters called the meeting to order. As you all know, we're here for the quarterly review and the follow-up vote on leadership. Richard Cross has requested time to present some concerns before the vote. Richard stood, looking every inch the powerful businessman in his expensive suit. Thank you, Eleanor. Members of the board, 3 months ago, you voted to retain my son as CEO despite my reservations. Today, I regret to inform you that my concerns were well-founded. He distributed folders to each board member. These documents show a pattern of financial misconduct, funds diverted to private accounts, unauthorized transfers, clear evidence of embezzlement. A murmur ran through the room as the board members examined the papers. Dominic remained calm, waiting for his father to finish. It pains me to bring this to light, Richard continued, his voice heavy with false regret. But the company must come first. I move that Dominic be removed as CEO immediately, and that I be reinstated temporarily until a suitable replacement can be found. Eleanor looked troubled. These are serious allegations, Richard. Dominic, how do you respond? Dominic stood slowly. First, I'd like to thank my father for bringing these documents to light. They are indeed evidence of serious financial misconduct. Richard looked surprised by Dominic's calm admission. However, Dominic continued, they are not evidence of my misconduct. He pressed a button, and the large screen on the wall lit up with documents of his own. These are the real financial records, certified by our independent auditors this morning. They show a very different story. The board members looked back and forth between the two sets of documents in confusion. Furthermore, Dominic said, I have evidence that the documents my father presented were falsified. By him. He nodded to James, who distributed new folders to the board. These records show transfers from offshore accounts to several members of this board. The room erupted in shocked exclamations. Richard's face went pale. Maxwell Reynolds, Elizabeth Chen, Gregory Patterson, Dominic read from his list, all received payments of at least $200,000 in the weeks preceding board votes, payments that came from accounts controlled by Richard Cross. This is absurd, Richard sputtered. You can't prove those accounts are mine. Actually, we can, James said, standing beside his brother. The accounts were opened using your personal email address, the same email address you used to communicate with Vanessa Morgan about your plan to frame Dominic. At that, the doors opened and Vanessa walked in, followed by Raina. It's true, Vanessa confirmed. Richard approached me months ago with a plan to remove Dominic from the company. I have all the emails, all the communications. Richard looked at Vanessa with fury. You treacherous... Careful, Richard. Vanessa smiled coldly. I recorded our last meeting too. Would you like the board to hear what you really think of them? Eleanor Winters looked shocked. Richard, is this true? Have you been bribing board members? Falsifying evidence against your own son? Richard looked around the room, seeing the tide turning against him. Everything I did was for the good of the company, he insisted. Dominic's modern ideas, his personal choices, they threatened everything we've built. No, Father, Dominic said quietly. Your inability to change, to adapt, that's what threatened the company. King & Cross needs to evolve. The world is changing, and we need to change with it. The board members looked at each other, the bribed members notably silent with shame. I move, Eleanor said firmly, that Richard Cross be permanently removed from any involvement with King & Cross, effective immediately. I further move that the board members implicated in this bribery scandal resign their positions. The vote was unanimous among those not implicated. Richard, seeing his defeat, stood up and walked to the door. He paused beside Dominic. You think you've won, he said bitterly, but you've lost everything I built for you. No, Father, Dominic replied. I've saved it, for the future. 6 months later, King & Cross was thriving under Dominic's leadership. With the corrupt board members replaced by fresh talent, the company had embraced a more modern, inclusive approach to fashion. Raina had been promoted to head designer of the new sustainable collection, her talent finally recognized on its own merits. Diana Mitchell had moved in with Eloise, the two women reconciling in the face of Diana's declining health. Raina visited them every day, grateful for the chance to rebuild her relationship with her mother in the time they had left. James had found his own path, starting a boutique marketing firm that sometimes consulted for King and Cross, but maintained its independence. His relationship with Dominic was stronger than ever, the brothers finally free from their father's manipulative influence. As for Vanessa, she had leveraged her role in exposing Richard into a position with a competing fashion house, not quite the job she'd wanted at King and Cross, but Dominic wasn't ready to trust her that far. Some betrayals cut too deep to fully forgive. On a crisp autumn evening, Dominic took Raina to the rooftop garden of his penthouse. The New York skyline sparkled around them, the city lights like stars brought down to earth. "I have something for you," Dominic said, handing her a small box. Inside was a key. "What's this?" Raina asked. "The key to our new office," Dominic explained. "I've set up a foundation in your name, the Mitchell Design Initiative. It will provide scholarships and paid internships for talented designers who can't afford fashion school." Raina's eyes filled with tears. "Dominic, that's incredible. There's something else," he said, taking her hand. "Something I've been wanting to ask you for a while now." He knelt down on one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. Inside was a stunning emerald ring, the same deep green as the dress she'd worn to the gala where their journey began. "Raina Mitchell," Dominic said, his voice filled with emotion. "You walked into my life unexpectedly and you changed everything. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Raina said without hesitation. "Yes, I will." As they embraced, Raina thought about the journey that had brought them here. From an unpaid intern to the future Mrs. Cross, from a chance meeting to a love strong enough to withstand betrayal, illness, and the schemes of those who should have supported them. Sometimes the most unexpected entrances lead to the most beautiful destinations. Sometimes the intern who walked in changes not just one life but many. And sometimes, against all odds, fairy tales do come true.